Well, this next topic may challenge you, or in fact, challenge your thinking a little. We've spoken about spiritual consciousness on this program so far with an excellent response. But what about exoconsciousness? Is it the same thing? Rebecca Hardcastle Wright, founder of the Institute of Exoconsciousness, and who coined the word, is joining us to talk about this fascinating subject, one which may have you walking away shaking your head in amazement. Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you, Dean. It's wonderful to be here.
Good to have you here. So, what is exoconsciousness, and is it the same as spiritual consciousness?
Exoconsciousness, as we are defining it today, because I created the word about 20 years ago. So it's gone through some different iterations, more academic at its beginning, and then today more in terms of how individuals experience it. So today the definition of exoconsciousness is that it's the innate human ability to connect, communicate, and importantly, co-create with extraterrestrials and multidimensionals.
You've been an ET multidimensional experiencer since childhood, or a conscious experiencer. So, what exactly does this all mean?
Well, I was a childhood experiencer. I grew up in West Virginia here in the United States, and I had not only extraterrestrial experiences, I had interdimensional experiences. I went underground as a child, which may sound strange until you get into talking with other experiencers and they talk about the same phenomenon that I had as a child. I don't know if I came into the world with my filters rather down or just because that was what I came here to do. But it took most of my life, I have looked into conspiracy theories, mind control, paranormal phenomenon, ufology, exopolitics, honestly, because I was trying to figure out what happened to me and who I was and who I am and who are these beings that I'm still communicating with. So when you ask me, is there a spirituality aspect to this? Absolutely, there is a spiritual aspect to it in two ways. I think there's a spiritual aspect. Is spirituality, does exoconsciousness equal spirituality? I would say no. Exoconsciousness equals a phenomenon similar to what people who are spiritual or let's say mystics have experienced, where they have this relationship with the other. Spirituality, I came out of a religious background. I went to Boston University. I was ordained in the United Methodist Church. I have, I have knowledge of religion, world religions. And one of the things that is definitive of religion is that you go as a group. So you don't like strike out ahead or you don't slow everybody down, but you as a group in a religion take the same steps together, and there's a dogma and a doctrine and rituals and tradition and a whole wonderful array of history and texts that accompany you on this journey during this earth life in religion. Juxtapose that to the individual spiritual journey, and the individual spiritual journey, which is in fact an exoconscious journey, because most, not all, but most anomalous experiences or extraterrestrial experiences happen to individuals. They change your heart, they change your mind, they change your entire belief system and perception of something as deep as what is reality. All of a sudden, reality is defined very differently. So when that happens to an individual, that is a very sometimes isolating, sometimes treacherous spiritual path that they engage in. So spiritual people who are exoconsciousness or have exoconsciousness or are developing it often become one with a spiritual path, which is of their own design, not of a religious design necessarily.
So, what about some of your experiences from childhood? What kind of experiences did you have?
Well, I grew up in this little town called Clarksburg, West Virginia, and there's a lot of mining there. It's a mining state. So the ground is very porous, quite frankly, there. I don't know what that has to do with the lack of gravity or the density, but the underground is not dense, it's porous. And it's full of minerals. And as a child, I was allowed a lot of freedom. I just went out the front door and explored and moved around and discovered things. And in that process of my childhood of discovery, frequently I met psychic beings that came to me. Some were extraterrestrials, took me up into a ship and spoke with me, took me to what I would term today star school, where there was a lot of teaching about symbols, about sound, different forms of healing, different forms of communication and expression, all with an extraterrestrial environment, beings, different kinds of beings. Some people ask me, you know, what kind of being am I? I think I'm more like a Heinz 57 because, and I think many of us are, because we have a lot of genetic and spiritual and conscious connection to these different races of extraterrestrials that have been present on Earth for as long as Earth has been here, probably. In terms of going underground, that I think was more of a type of shamanic experience. As I got older, I started to see it like that. But as a child, I had a very, very extreme impression of being pulled under the ground by these beings. But the interesting thing is, I never was really afraid. I don't know what I was thinking, but you know, when you're a child, you just sort of, well, this is part of my life, so I guess I'll just, you know, partake of it. And I was pulled under. I met these interdimensional beings under the ground. And now that I've kind of studied what happened to me and what continues to happen to me today, I see that it's probably part of what the shamanic tradition was that I innocently stumbled upon as a child. And it's throughout the history of religious mysticism. It's in part of indigenous tribes and their rituals. So it's really quite a commonplace thing for humans to experience.